Hey guys, for today's video, I'll be going over Flins' kits, artifacts, weapons, teams, and constellations to help you reach his full potential. Starting off with his kits, he has the Not Cry Moonsign mechanics, which pretty much just means that he gets more buffs to his damage if you have another Not Cry character on your team, since Not Cry characters are able to increase the Moonsign level from the Nascent Gleam level to the Ascendant Gleam level. For his skill, he switches to his Manifest form, which increases interruption resistance, infuses his attacks with Electro, and changes his skill into an enhanced skill, meaning that he's going to play like every other normal attack, elemental infusion character like Arlequino, Hu Tao, Risley, etc. His enhanced skill then enhances his ultimate for 6 seconds while doing a ton of damage. Now, if you haven't noticed, even though Flins is a lunar charged character, his kit has no mentions of this, at least as of just yet, because this lunar charged damage will be present in his ultimate, where he does 2 instances of middle phase lunar charged electro damage, 1 instance of final phase lunar charged electro damage, which just does more damage than the middle phase damage, and 2 more instances of middle phase lunar charged electro damage if you have another Not Cry character on your team that increases your Moonsign level. Now, even though Bros' first ultimate lets him max aura farm, his regular ultimate is typically not better than his enhanced ultimate, which consumes less energy, is able to be done while using his skill, and does 1 instance of lunar charged electro damage, and another one if you have another Not Cry character on your team. For his talents, it states that if you have another Not Cry character on the team, lunar charged reactions triggered by Flins would deal an additional 20% damage, which, for the 3rd time, incentivizes you to get another Not Cry character. His other talent states that Flins' elemental mastery is increased by 8% of his attack, with the maximum increase obtainable this way being 160, which means that you're gonna want at least 2000 attack to make use of this talent. His other talent states that when a nearby party member triggers an electro-charged reaction, it'll be converted into the lunar-charged reaction, with every 100 attack that Flint has, increasing the base damage by 0.7% up to a maximum of 14%, which once again incentivizes you to get 2000 attack. Additionally, when Flint is in the party's moonsign will increase by 1 level, which means that your moonsign level will unconditionally be at the Nascent Gleam level, and you'll only need 1 more Not Cry unit to raise it to the Ascendant Gleam level and get all of those extra buffs. For his traces, you're gonna want to prioritize leveling up his ultimate and then his skill. So how do you actually apply all of this information? Well, all you're gonna want to do is his skill, then his enhanced skill, then his enhanced ultimate, then just repeat this. You're also gonna want to apply Hydro onto the enemy to cause the lunar charged reaction before you use his skill. And before all of this, make sure to use an additional Not Cry character to raise the Moonsign level and do more damage. For his artifacts, his best in slot is going to be the Night of Disguise's Unveiling, because it increases his crit rate by 30%, Elemental Mastery by 80%, and it increases lunar reaction damage by at least 10%, with the potential for 40% if other allies are utilizing this set, or the Silken Moon's Serenade sets as well, which is really good considering that lunar reaction damage bonuses are the least diminishing buffs to lunar reaction damage, since attack, EM, and crits are easier to get through supports, weapons, constellations, or artifacts. His other best set would be the Gilded Dream set because it increases his EM by 80 as well, and his attack by 14% for every ally who is of the same element. Not only that, but it also increases his EM by 50 for every party member with a different element, which is good because EM and attack percentage are 2 of the 3 stats he really wants. For another option, using different 2-piece sets that provide attack percentage would also be viable. The Thundering Fury set would also be viable because it increases your electro damage by 15%, your lunar charge damage by 20%, and it reduces the cooldown of your skill by 1 second every 0.8 seconds. For your main stats, you're gonna want attack percentage on your sands and goblets, and crit damage or crit rate on your circlet. For your substats, you're gonna want to prioritize getting energy recharge onto 120% to around 140%, then crits, then attack percentage, then elemental mastery. For his weapons, his best in slot is obviously his signature weapon because it gives him 22% crit rate, 36% lunar charge damage dealt, 28% crit damage, and 12 elemental energy every 14 seconds. For an alternative, the Staff of the Scarlet Sands would be good because it gives him 44% crit rate and gains 136% of his elemental mastery as an attack bonus. For another alternative, the Staff of Homa would also be powerful because it gives you 66% crit damage, 20% increased HP, and it gives an attack bonus based off of 0.8% of your HP, and an additional attack bonus based off of 1% of your HP if you're below 50% of your max HP. For another alternative, the Primordial Jade Winged Spear would also be powerful because it increases crit rate by 22%, increases attack percentage by 22.4%, and damage dealt by 15%. For 4-star alternatives, the Deathmatch would be viable because it increases crit rate by 36%, provides 32% attack if there are 2 or more opponents nearby, and 48% attack if there are less than 2 opponents nearby. For another alternative, the Prospector's Shovel would also be viable because it increases attack by 41% and lunar charge damage by 12%, and increases lunar charge damage by an additional 12% if the moon sign is of the Ascendant Gleam level. For another alternative, the Ballad of the Fjords would also be viable because it provides 27% crit rates and 240 elemental mastery when there are at least 3 different elements on your team. For his teams, considering that Flins is pretty much exclusively a lunar charged DPS that doesn't work too well in aggravate or overload teams, his only viable teams are going to revolve around lunar charge. So you're gonna want a Hydro Applicator, a Resistance Shredder or Elemental Mastery provider, and an off-field Electro character. Also, any character that is fulfilling any one of these roles should be a Notcry character that can raise the moon sign level. For Hydro Applicators, Yelan will be extremely powerful, with Furina and Jinchou being decent, and C6 Aino being a good option since her performance is better than Yelan, and she can fulfill the moon sign requirements. For Res Shredders and EM providers, Silonen will be his best option, with Kazuha and Zhongli still being viable, and Sucrose being the only EM provider that doesn't affect the lunar charged reaction. For his off-field Electro Applicator, characters like Auroron or Fischl will be viable, but Inefa will pretty much break or make your Flint's team, not to mention she can raise the moon sign level as well. For his Constellations, his C1 states that the basic cooldown of his enhanced skill is reduced by 6 seconds, which is a massive boost to his damage since it's a 66% reduction. Additionally, when party members trigger lunar charged reactions, Flins will recover 8 elemental energy every 5.5 seconds, which is really good since it'll let him constantly use his enhanced ultimate without having to worry about ER that much. For his C2, it states that for the next 6 seconds after using his enhanced skill, when Flints' next normal attack hits an opponent, it will deal an additional 50% of Flints' attack as AoE electro damage that is considered lunar charge damage, which is incredibly decent since Inefa does this, but with a 195% multiplier over 6 seconds with their C0 talents. It also states that when the moon sign level is of the Ascendant Gleam level, his electro attacks reduce the opponent's electro resistance by 25% for 7 seconds, which is pretty good if you have Silonen since it'll allow you to pretty much fully reduce most bosses' electro resistances. And this constellation will become even better if you don't have Silonen or a Resistant Shredder because this resistance reduction will have accelerated returns. For his C4, it states that Flints' attack is increased by 20% and his talents is increased so that Flints' Elemental Mastery is now increased by 10% of his attack, with the maximum increase obtainable this way being 220 rather than 160 EM, which is a decent boost if you're going for C6 and just a bad investment if you're not. For his C6, it states that the damage dealt to opponents by Flints' lunar charged reactions is elevated by 35%, and if the moon sign is of the Ascendant Gleam level, nearby party members' lunar charged damage is elevated by 10%, which is a really powerful increase in lunar charged scaling since it increases the overall lunar charged damage of the team by 145%. For my pulling recommendations, I suggest going for Inefa first since he loses around 30% of his DPS, which is already just decent for a Notcry character that's expected to have higher numbers than at least Varisa, though chances are Columbina will probably help him along with other Notcry characters just as much as Inefa is helping him, so if you'd be okay with waiting for her, that could be fine too. Regardless, after Inefa or Columbina, you're gonna want his C1 since it's a massive boost in damage, then his R1 because the increase to lunar charge is really valuable, then his C2 since it's the least of your priorities, but it's relatively pretty cheap to more constellations and refinements, and it increases his damage by a good amount. Anyways, that's all I've got for today. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. If you have anything to say, please leave it down in the comments below. I would greatly appreciate it. Goodbye.